Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Making It. I'm Bob Clagett from I Like to Make Stuff. I'm here with David Picciuto, the Drunken Woodworker, and Jimmy Diresta. Glad to have you guys with us tonight listening to the podcast. Before we get started, I want to ask you, if you listen to the podcast on iTunes, go there and leave us a review. Tell us what you really think about it. Leave us a star rating and a review. That really helps get the show in front of other people. We'd really appreciate it quite a bit. So to get rolling, we're going to talk about what we're working on. Jimmy, what are you working on right now?
Well, today I spent the day out in New Jersey at a warehouse. Interesting warehouse, by the way, which houses a lot of crazy props. That's why on my Diresta Instagram, I'm holding a big giant gavel. It was like 5 feet tall, really huge gavel. Anyway, that's where they store the Crown Royal bar, which fell over while it was being moved, and the back bar cracked. So I had to replace the frosted glass. So Dave and I drove out to New Jersey, about 25 miles away, and spent the day just making sure that the whole entire bar was good and ready to go. It was just that one thing that broke, so they asked me to go out there and repair that. And then I got back this evening, and Dave Welder and I dug into a pair of fake cat paws, which you guys will see a little bit more about. I'll explain that later in the week.
Yes, which we've seen and is really, really awesome.
Thank you. Dave, what do you got going on?
I am working on a kind of like a mail holder key rack, like something you put in your entryway out of pallet wood. I have a big pile of pallet wood in front of me. It's going to be one of those your first woodworking project videos. So I'm hoping to all you need is a little jigsaw and a drill, and you can make this. And that's what I'm working on right now. I'm in the middle of shooting a CNC video. I've never done 2 videos at one time. I think you guys have both done that. That's new for me. So,
what are you finding different about shooting 2 at one time?
Just nothing, because it's just like, okay, I reached a good milestone with that project. I'm going to go on to here, and my energy is still up because I've moved on to kind of something else. And the only thing different is when I might have 2 different projects on one SD card, so I separate them into 2 different projects right away, so clips don't get confused or deleted accidentally. That's my biggest fear, is just accidentally deleting a clip. Working with 2 different projects at one time.
Yeah, I always I just downloaded footage just now while we've been talking. I make sure I get it off the camera right away. And so it's at least in 2 spots. So I know it's on the camera, then it's on the computer if there's any problems, at least for a little while.
Yeah, I was actually talking to somebody about when we talked about how we made our videos. I had a few comments, some more questions about it last week or the week before, whenever that was. And it was something I forgot to mention that I found is really handy in the process of making videos, and then we can move on past this. But I found that it was really beneficial for me to have 2 of certain things, especially batteries and memory cards. And so I found that if I have one battery in the charger, and it's like a knockoff brand, it's not a Canon, it's like the cheap battery. But if I have one in the charger, then I don't have to worry about having a dead battery in the camera ever, because they just swap out. I've always got that.
Yep.
And once I did that, I was like, wow, this really makes it more productive. And then I realized I was doing the same thing with memory cards. So I got a second memory card. So anytime one gets filled up, which happens pretty often, I take it to the computer, start pulling the footage from that, and stick in the other card and keep shooting. And so, redundancies like that, for anybody that's looking to make their workflow, more productive and keep things moving, finding some points like that where you need redundancies might be a good thing to do.
I do find that the knockoff batteries, they're only like $5 or $6 on Amazon or eBay, where a Nikon or Sony battery is like $30, $40. So, and they work just as well. And I also have multiple SD cards, and I get the highest rated, whatever it is, class 10 at 92 megabits per second speed. If you're doing video, you want something that writes fast and the files move faster too. So that's a good tip, Bob.
Yeah, and actually, when you're talking about the SD cards, I have 2 different kinds, and I tried to get not the top of the line one for my first card, and it worked fine for most applications. Then I got a nicer card when I got my backup. And so recently I was recording something, and I used a new microphone that I had that's like a higher quality mic. And I went and recorded this shot and came back to listen to it, and there was no audio.
Oh, that's a bummer.
And so then I was trying to figure out exactly what the deal was. I switched mics and it was fine. But then I switched cards and it went back and forth. And it turned out that something about the throughput of the nicer mic was too much for the card to be able to write. And I don't understand exactly what the deal was there. But, all those components can work together. So when you're, looking at SD cards, David's totally right. Going for the nicest one is probably the safest bet.
Mm-hmm. And here's another tip. Don't get them at Best Buy. They are twice as much at Best Buy, at least for the SanDisk ones, as they are on Amazon.
But Best Buy price matches Amazon.
Do they?
They do.
Wow. Because I went there and I'm like, there's no way I'm paying for this card. Because I looked at it on my phone and I'm like, it's twice as much. Yeah. Because the Class 10 cards are really expensive. But I didn't know that. So I'm learning all kinds of good tips
today.
Yeah. And Bob, what are you working on this week? Did you?
I'm actually finishing up the same things I was working on last week. I just did the voiceover for my XCarve build video tonight. So that's, hopefully going to be out the door later on in the week, which will be great. And then my Connect 4 got a lot farther with that. My wife actually this weekend took all my kids to Florida to see her family for the weekend. And so I had Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday by myself in the house.
That's incredible.
Which was, of course I missed them. And, it was weird to be so quiet and stuff. But talk about productivity, man. I was in the shop from 9 a.m. to like 2 a.m. And I would look up in the middle of the evening and be like, oh, I should probably go eat something.
I do that. I do that all the time. I'm like, oh, it's 2:00. I didn't eat breakfast or lunch yet. I should do that.
Yeah. So I'm still working on those two things, but I actually got a whole lot done. I ended up doing a bunch of shop reorganization, which makes the shop bigger and makes it more productive. And, it was really good all the way around. So,
Bob, by the way, great interview last night with Matthias Wendell. It was fun. It was fun to watch. Yeah, he really opened up. He's a funny guy. Really funny guy.
He's a smart dude.
It was cool. It was really awesome to talk to him a little bit before and just during. I learned so much, about why he's doing what he's doing. And yeah, it was really cool.
So if you don't know, we're talking about Bob's show called Brain Pick, which you can find on Bob's website.
And also on iTunes. I put the episodes up, within a week or so after the video as an audio only version. So that one will go up hopefully Friday. We'll see.
Cool. Right. So, guys, we're talking tonight about how we learned what we do. And, everybody has a different path in life. And it's funny, you meet people in the handmade industry and you say, what did you go to college for? And they say, oh, I went to college for English. And you say, how'd you get here? So just talking a little bit about each one of our paths. And you guys might be... listeners might be surprised at some of the twists and turns everyone's career has taken. I just recently posted my video about my New Orleans speech where I talk about my twists and turns, but I left a lot of details out, which I can dig into a couple tonight. But that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So
that was an excellent talk, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, just kind of shooting from the hip there, and it was supposed to be a Q&A, and I try to lighten the room up and trying to get people a little bit loosey-goosey, but nobody was really loosey-goosey, and everyone was kind of just looking. And so I kept talking, and then that's why I finally said, does anybody have a question? But no, it ended up coming out nice. I kind of watched it a few times before I decided to put it up, and I'm happy I put it up. Getting some really nice comments on that, so that's good. It's you just got to lay it out there and hope for the best. But, you feel like you're standing up there naked when you do something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with it, and I'm like I said, I'm happy with the response. So
cool.
So Bob, what brought you to where you are? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh man, when I was little, I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy. So did I.
Really?
Yeah, I have a big interest in that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was it for years and years and years. And in the back of my mind, there was always I want to work for Lego and design sets, which was never realistic, but always something I wanted to do. And when it got closer to college time, I was kind of waffling on what I wanted to do. Ended up right before I graduated from high school finding this art school in Savannah I was interested in going to. And it was funny. I went through this whole pitch. I was going to go to the state school in Kentucky, University of Kentucky, and was going to do like graphics or architecture or something. I hadn't really figured it out. So I found this art school. And I was like, there's no way my parents are going to let me go to art school. So without telling them, I came up with this whole pitch, this whole, I researched the school, found out the cost, did this whole thing. And then I came to them with this pitch. And I was like, okay, here's the school. Here's what it does. Here's why I actually will be able to make a living coming out of the school and all, this stuff. And they were like, okay. I did a bunch of work that I didn't need to do probably, but it was really good because I was super motivated, to just try it out. And I still didn't have a real clear idea what I was going to do, but I ended up coming for graphic design, did that for about 2 quarters and then realized that I hadn't gotten to use a computer yet. And they were like, yes, you're not going to use a computer until your second year or third year or whatever.
What year was this? Because computers didn't even exist when I was in school.
This was 95. I mean, they were around, but they wanted you to have the, the hand drawing fundamental type stuff, which is totally understandable. But I realized at that point that those fundamentals were not what I wanted, So I switched to computer art, which at the time was just a general kind of computer studies for 3D animation, 2D animation, effects. There was no interactivity at that point.
Did you learn Maya? Were you learning on Maya? What was the first program?
Yeah, I did Softimage for 3D, and then Maya was kind of coming up right when I was finishing school. So I did a little bit of it.
Yeah, right on.
But so I did that, and then in my last quarter of school, they started introducing some of the interactive programming type stuff. And none of the professors really knew a whole lot about it, knew how to teach it. And so my last quarter was a combination of me trying to finish up school and also on the side, just seeking out all this knowledge for stuff that wasn't available in the school itself. And I think that was one of the big points when I found myself with a real desire to learn stuff that I had to actively go look for, Yeah. And through that last quarter or 2 quarters or whatever it was, I learned a whole lot about programming and got really, really interested in it and took a programming class my last quarter. And when on the last day of college, my final class, this professor who I loved, we did our final review, and then she said, "Come up here. I want you to talk to this other guy, the head of the department." So I go up there, and she says, "Well, I'm leaving tomorrow to go back to Scotland, and we need somebody to teach this class that you just taught, or that you just took. Can you teach this class?" And I'm like, "What?" So and this was at spring break. I finished in the winter quarter. So basically, I finished college. I had a week off, and then I started teaching college.
Wow!
And the cool thing about that was because I had immersed myself outside of school in learning this stuff that wasn't really available. I then had it really, at the forefront of my brain to go back and teach other people about it. And that just worked out really, really well. But, from that, I went down the path of programming because I got so interested in chasing it. And it was so new, relatively new to the web world at that time. I started a company, did web design on my own with this company for, 10 years or something. And then, have moved into different parts of that same career since then. But, a lot of it, I think, was just really proactive. I want to know how to do this thing. Nobody else knows how to teach me that thing where I am.
Curiosity.
Yeah, exactly.
Curiosity,
So I sought it out. But so that's kind of how I got to where I am, career wise and learning. I think specifically I learn in a very different way, but we can get to that. So what about you?
I'm going to ask you just another question about woodwork and where you are at this moment. I mean, is this something you always wanted to do, woodwork and, doing the videos and stuff? I know the videos are sort of a manifestation of your blogging. What brought you to start to blog, for instance, and start to do the woodwork?
Well, I started, I've always made things on and off here and there. I think it mainly started in college as far as people, I needed a bed for my apartment, and so I was like, okay, let me build the cheapest bed I can make out of 2x4s. And then I did that, and then a friend needed something, and then I made something for them, and then I started getting tools for Christmas here and there. And my parents have always been really awesome. Going through college, my Christmas presents were always like, hey, here's a router and a router table. Next year it was like, hey, here's a table saw. Hey, here's and it just built up like, wow, I have tools all of a sudden. And so it just kind of, I started making things here and there. And then as far as the blog, I was spending so much time on the computer, so much time, not doing anything with my hands for so many years that it got just like, I have to make something. I have to physically do something. And so I came up with the idea of doing this blog so that I could have a reason, a justification for spending time, making things out of wood or out of whatever away from the family. That was kind of the thing. Like I had to be able to justify it to myself. And so that outlet got me started kind of down that path, and then it just snowballed.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah. Now here you are, video, and you're at the premiere interview show on YouTube.
Doing a podcast with you two guys, which is something I never thought I would do.
I never thought I would do a podcast ever. David, what was your path? Your loose path?
It's kind of funny. Lots of twists and turns, but mine is kind of along the same lines as Bob.
Copycat.
Yeah, I know, right? I graduated, to date myself, I graduated high school way back in 1993.
Got you beat, both of you.
Well, we're all young at heart, right?
Yeah.
So in high school, I took 4 years of wood shop just because I hated high school. I hated any kind of book class. I just had a bad attitude about a lot of things back then. And so I just wanted to take wood shop. And then I graduated high school with no plans on doing anything. I just wanted to play music and hang out with my friends. And then like 4 years went by.
Same with me.
Yeah, right?
I graduated high school. I had no idea what to do next.
Yeah, I had no plans. There was no thoughts of college at all. And then, just playing music and doing stupid things as a young adult. And then 4 years went by, and I was working at Kmart for like 4 or 5 years. And I'm like, maybe this isn't the right career path. My band is not going to be the next big thing. So I decided to go to college, and I'm glad I waited, because when I decided to go to college, I wanted to go. So I didn't do very good in high school as far as grades, but when I decided to go to college, I was like the best student there, because I cared and I was paying for it myself. And I went to school for graphic design like Bob. And that's kind of if you go to college for graphic design, it's kind of a wide range, because it includes, at least where I went, it includes photography. And at that time, the web was the new thing. So there was some web stuff in there, and then package design and layout and all that. And I didn't know where I was going to go with that, but I knew that I really enjoyed that. So once I graduated with my graphic design degree, worked for a newspaper where I was the photo editor. I took the negatives and scanned in all the photographs and photoshopped them to put them in the newspaper. And then they needed a website. And I was like, I have an interest in web design. Let me play around. I think I can do this. And so I really started to dive into web design a little bit further. And as I learned, I'm like, this is what I want to do. And then I left that company and went for an ad agency in Toledo. That didn't work out so well. They went under, basically. And then I got another job at another ad agency where I started out as a graphic designer there, and then kind of turned into the web developer there. And I really, really liked web development. Like I just, like every morning I turn on the computer and then I read all the web design blogs, because I'm just excited about like new technologies and stuff. And so that was my passion for a long time. And so I worked at this agency for 9 years. And then towards the end of that, I just I miss doing things with my hands, and I needed some picture frames for some of my photography art. And then it kind of got me back into woodworking, and I discovered.
Oh, yeah, I remember you saying that, the picture frames.
Yeah.
The way you are now.
Yeah, the picture frames got me to where I am. I discovered Wood Whisperer and Steve Ramsey. And I'm like, this woodworking stuff is awesome. So it was all kind of by chance. I took a lot of turns, and here we are. Now I'm obsessed with woodworking, and I'm still watching Steve Ramsey and the Wood Whisperer and everybody else. And, I just totally dove into it and just tried to learn everything as much as I could, and in a very short amount of time. Took all my money, spent it all on my shop. My savings just went right into my shop, as table saw, bandsaw, and planer.
This is all like in the last few years, right?
All in the last few years. I've been woodworking less than 4 years, like 3.5 years or something like that. So
But you had a basis though. You said from high school.
From high school, back in 1993 and 92, 91. So, but I still have that passion for web development. And then at the ad agency, I also shot video and did some photography there too. And so I figured out how to do all of that together. So now I have my website. I still do the photography. I still do the videos, and I'm woodworking. I figured out how to take all these skills that I built up through the last 20 years into a career. It's so weird and crazy how it just worked out. And now I'm doing this thing that I love, and all these skills that had no relation all of a sudden do, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. I think that's why I always say don't ever consider anything you do wasted time, because it's all going to come back. It's all going to be something that you're going to eventually come across to do again for yourself or for a client or something. It's I'm interviewing both of you guys, but Bob, what is your hometown? Where did you grow up?
Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
And is that near Louisville? Or
yeah, it's about 45 minutes south of Louisville.
Oh, right on. And David, you're from Toledo all the time?
Other small towns around Toledo, Fremont, Ohio, Elmore, Ohio. But most people will know Toledo, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I grew up in Long Island, a small town called Woodmere, which is about 20 miles from Manhattan. I'm like right near JFK Airport. So I grew up my whole life kind of in Queens, like hanging out in Queens and Rockaway Beach and all around there. And always wanting to go to the big city. It's kind of like Saturday Night Fever, but I didn't dance. It was about making things.
well, let's hear your path.
Well, I grew up in that small town with a bunch of friends, and it's funny. All my friends grew up. I grew up with a group of guys that all should be comedians and actors. They were all very funny. I mean, like you think of like Joe Pesci and like Goodfellas, but not that violent. But those are the type of guys I grew up with. Very funny, like really witty group of guys. So I feel like
funny like a clown.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, including my brothers, of course, and my dad and my sisters and my sister and my mom, we're all, so it kind of, I guess you could say like my New York attitude and my New York wit has been exercised my whole life growing up with this, where I grew up. But my dad always built things, and I was always very curious. I talked about that in my New Orleans speech. But my dad always kind of nurtured that in me. I said somewhere along the way, my dad bought me a set of carving chisels, and I was so intimidated by them. I didn't touch them until I was like 18 years old. And he bought them for me when I was like 10. And they had been around like the whole time. Like I would touch them, I'd take them out, look at them, and I never used them because I was afraid I was going to unsharpen them. And I had no idea how to sharpen them. So, but I remember one day, my dad really, he's been the biggest inspiration for me when it comes to making things. Because ever since I was little, put me in front of all the saws and said, "This is how you use a radial arm saw. This is this. This is that." And he carved the wing of an eagle, and I was like, "Whoa." I had no idea you could do that. And he's like, hey, yeah, he goes, you finish it. And I didn't really finish it. I was too intimidated to play with it, but it inspired me. I'm like, wow, if he could do that, and he totally did it just to show me that it could be done. It was really cool of him. And he just carved one side. He never made a whole eagle. He only ever just made one wing. And he did it just because he was curious and he wanted to use the tools that he got me. Like, I think he wanted to just show me that they actually work. And so anyway, so making things has always been there in the background, always. And so my dad encouraged me. He went and spoke to the guidance counselors about how I could nurture the whole time I was in school, I was diagnosed with learning disability because I just never paid attention and I never studied. And anything that was ever spoke about in class, I would just remember it. I never studied ever. So when it came time to take, I was like, oh, we're taking a test today. Like I never paid attention. I never knew when things were going on. I always joke. I say when the PSAT, I took the PSAT, and then a few months later, the teachers are all talking about the SAT. I'm like, didn't we just take this test? They go, no, that's the PSAT. I go, what's the difference? They go, P means pre. There's the practice version. I'm like, you mean I got to do this again? They're like, the first time didn't count. This is just practice. Now this one counts. That's the true story because I had absolutely no intentions of going to college. And my dad was a fireman, so I thought maybe I'd end up being a fireman. And my older brother was in the Marine Corps, so I mean, I kind of thought about maybe going in the Marine Corps. But when I graduated high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But I had encountered a close friend of mine, still a good friend of mine, who had gone to the School of Visual Arts. And then a mentor of mine, this woman that I worked for when I was growing up, had also gone to the School of Visual Arts. And so it had been kind of talked about as I grew up. But my dad got me involved in architectural design. And so half the day I would go to a different school for architecture and math. And I literally would get on like the little bus at 7 a.m. outside my house. And then the little bus would drop me off after architecture and design school. It was a vocational school that Long Island has. It's called BOCES. And if anybody from Long Island or East Coast might have heard of BOCES, Board of Cooperational Educational Services. And it was basically a vocational school that high school kids would go to. And in the actual school that I was in half the day from 7 to like noon, they taught marine mechanics. So you learn how to make a boat and
wow,
build a motor. Right across the hall from my architectural design class was the dentistry lab. There's a tremendous room, like it seemed like the size of a football field. It was just all like lab tech learning about how to make fake teeth, and all amazing. Down the hall was all metal fabrication, and it had a bad reputation because all like the dirtbag kids would go there because they just it wasn't a path to college; it was a path to physically working, and so all the troublemakers went. And so at noontime, I'd get off the little yellow bus in front of school with like 2 other people, and everybody would be like, "Where were you all day? Like, why do you get off that little bus?" And I grew up in sort of an affluent neighborhood where everybody I went to school with was on a college path, and me and all my good fellow friends, we were just going to get jobs after school.
It's okay to call the bus the short bus, by the way.
Yeah, no, the short. Yeah, that's what I mean. The short bus. So everyone's like, "You got off the short bus. Like, is everything okay with you?" It's the truth. I swear. The girls would be like, "So I saw you get off the bus when I was looking through the window of class today. Like, where do you go in the morning?" And anyway, so by the time I graduated high school and I had to decide whether I wanted to go to architecture school, I had to cheat to get out of Regents math. I had to cheat off the kid in front of me to pass physics Regents as a senior in high school. So I said, "There's no way I'm going to put myself through this torture and go to college for this," because I realized architecture is like a tremendous amount of math and engineering, all the technical stuff, and I just never felt like I was good at it. I knew what I wanted to look like, but I don't know how to the forces and stuff. In time now in my life, I understand it much more than I did at the time. But we were given assignments like, this is the force, this is the load, this is the stress, this is the wind stress, this is the compression of the soil, like all these mathematical equations I had to learn in architecture. And it took the fun out of it for me. And I was really more of like a free and easy kind of designer kind of mind. I was studying like Picasso and Andy Warhol, and these are kind of the things that I would always look for, and, Da Vinci, and I would always think to myself, I don't really need to be an architect to design and build the things I want. I could be an artist and then just hire an engineer if I ever got a job designing anything complicated, like a building. And so after high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I bumped into Perry again, and Perry's like, "Hey, you should consider going to school." This is a year after I graduated. And I graduated high school in 1985. And so with a little encouragement from my buddy Perry and a couple of other things that were going on, I felt like I was kind of directionless a year after high school. I took a train to the city and I signed up for the School of Visual Arts night class just to kind of get my feet wet to see what it was about. And then eventually I became a full-time student. And but while I was a student there, I took graphic design because I didn't really have any other direction. Everyone said, "Oh, you'd be a good graphic designer," because I used to draw a lot. And then while I was in graphic design, I talk about this in my New Orleans speech, my graphic design teacher realized that I was probably better suited to be a 3D illustrator. And then I started doing 3D illustration with Kevin O'Callahan, who was my portfolio teacher. And then I graduated with a portfolio that basically was heavy in illustration, all three-dimensional, which like the final result of a 3D illustration is the photograph. So, think about when you see editorials and it's a photograph of a 3D model. Or like another good example at the time was all the Absolute Vodka ads. Do you remember all those Absolute Vodka ads had like the big 3D models, and the photograph was the finished piece. I actually spent the summer working at that studio. So I bring it up. It's called Prop Art down here on Elizabeth Street, Manhattan. The guys that owned it were super nice, and they had an amazing collection of cool props. Like you walk through that place and you're like, "I saw that. Oh, I saw that. I saw that." And they're all advertisement props. And they would get to keep every model that they made. Because they said they're selling the photograph, not the model. So they would make the model and the photograph was the finished piece. And all those Absolute ads, like that you think, like Absolute Pittsburgh is one that sticks out in my mind. And it looked like the bottle had just been like forged in steel. and it was all like glowing orange. It was like on the shelf in their place. Everything was like about the real size of an Absolute bottle. It was pretty cool. I never did work on any of those, but I did a lot of. They specialized in miniatures, so I was working on miniatures. And then just before I graduated, I met Mark Setta Ducati, who was an inventor, and he encouraged me to be an inventor in the toy business. And so he, it was a slow go, but I was doing toy design with him, and then with a lot of his friends, and I just kept meeting people through him, and then I just developed my own group of friends through the toy business, and I designed toys from 1990 until 2008. Designed and built toys. I used to go to China quite a bit. I did a lot of the engineering, and I learned it all on the job. I'd engineer how like the stresses and the toys, and so everything that came before that. I talked about working. I worked in a sign shop in high school, cutting bandsaw stuff, and all my architectural experience from high school, and all the while always just experimenting in the shop that my dad had built in my house that I grew up in. And all the while, always had a wood shop there to play with. So all these different experiences all came together in the toy business because I had the ability to make, design, build. And then my brother John got me in the TV business. He said, come and help me shoot this concept for a show. And then the very first pitch meeting we went to, the guy there said, why don't you be in the show? I wasn't trying to be in the show. I was just trying to work on the show. And I said, okay, why not? And so we shot a pilot, and everyone liked the pilot. And then, so one thing led to another, and I did a couple of different TV shows, all the while still trying to do toy business stuff. And then it was really after Hammer that I really started doing private fabrication for interior designers. And I slowly started leaving the toy business because it became less and less profitable. Every toy business gig became a thing like, hey, I got this great idea. You build the prototype and we'll share the royalties. So I was working for free all the time because the royalties very rarely came. And if they did, there really wasn't enough to go around. I never really was involved in any hugely successful toys.
The squishy eyeballs, that wasn't hugely successful?
It was, but, it wasn't enough to last 20 years,
Yeah.
And, we split it up. We had some partners with it, and the company takes the lion's share, and they share it with you because they do the hardest part. They market it and manufacture it, and they also take all the liability and everything. So you get a small royalty, and then I split it with my partners, who was my brother at the time, and then my friend Perry, who I mentioned earlier. He sort of got me in the School of Visual Arts, and then when I graduated, he graduated before me. We found each other in the toy business again, so it was kind of serendipitous for us to kind of keep working together. And he and I kind of shared in the profits of the squishy eyeball. And we always say, isn't it funny? Because when I was working in the sign shop let's see, this is going to be hard to remember exact dates, but it might have been 1985. I was working in the sign shop, and Perry came to work in the sign shop during his winter break at School of Visual Arts. And I said, where have you been? Because he was ahead of me. He's like, oh, I'm at the School of Visual Arts now. And I said, oh, I'm going to graduate soon. I don't know what to do. And he said, you should go there. Anyway, fast forward 10 years, 11 years, and then he and I had the squishy eyeball product out on the market together. So, awesome. we always say, the serendipity that we met at the sign shop. We got reacquainted because we hadn't seen each other, and if it wasn't for him coming to work at that sign shop, I probably wouldn't have gone to the School of Visual Arts because it was like that last conversation that put me over the edge to say, let me check this out. People keep talking about this place, and then and then we ended up working together. Yeah, and then, I talked about this again in my New Orleans speech. One thing led to another with TV, and it's just so frustrating. You just can't get anywhere. It's all in everybody else's hands, and like everybody that is like hugely successful on TV, there's a lot of luck. Of course, there's a lot of hard work, but luck is almost about as much of it as the hard work. And I kept getting opportunities, but they just kind of were leading into dead ends. And so I feel really happy with where I am right now. Just taking control and just doing YouTube and doing what I want when I want. And, we're starting to make a little bit of money with it. And, but what's good about it is it's leading to other gigs, where people see what I'm doing and they're like, hey, can you build that for me? Or, and now I'm kind of fully immersed in the commercial, marketing, building things for marketing. And, it's a lucrative business, if we can play the game right. And I get to make cool, fun stuff.
You can't beat that.
You can't beat that. Yeah. From what I've heard from all three of us, we've all taken everything that we've learned throughout the past, 25 years or so, and made it into a career, multiple skills, and here we are.
Yeah, there was another thing that you both said, actually, that had stuck out to me, and I'd forgotten this. Before I was doing this stuff on YouTube, I spent a couple of years doing music, because I've always played music. And
yeah, you both have done music.
Yeah, but I was actually doing music on YouTube. So I spent a couple of years doing these things called video songs, where you record a song, but then you video yourself actually doing the recording process. So when the song is mixed, you put together a video that's of the actual takes that you used. So you're actually seeing the performance. It's not like a music video where it's all dubbed after the fact. And so there's a big community of musicians that do that. And it's, to me, a really authentic way to see people perform and write music, because you're actually seeing them do it, not fake it, over their music. So I spent a couple of years doing that, and through that built a lot of the video skill, and built some audio engineering skill and all this stuff that I got to a point where I was like, well, I just can't really keep up with this. But those 2 years or so had built a lot of skills that then sat there for 6 months or so. And then I was like, oh, wait, I can make stuff and use those videos. I can make videos about it.
Yeah.
And so, you're totally right, David. It's like all, everything is a stone stacked on the previous stack of stones,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Just
when I was a student, at school, I was extremely curious, which I think is another key to the puzzle. Another piece of the puzzle is that curiosity is really important. I was always just so curious of how things got done. So I would I mentioned this once before, but there was a TV show called Movie Magic that was hosted by Tom Bosley, who was the dad from Happy Days. Does anybody remember that show?
No.
Anybody in the audience waving their hand?
Yeah.
But it was like it pulled the curtain back on prop making. It was the first time I saw anybody sitting in a barber chair with a head full of plaster, getting their head casted, with straws sticking out of their nose. It was all this movie magic, and they would show you how a car chase, was just done in segments, and then when they put the sequence together, you'd see this crazy, adrenaline rush. And breaking glass, how breaking a bottle over someone's head is really just sugar or whatever. And so all these things were handmade by artists. And that was always another thing. So while I was at the School of Visual Arts, I was constantly experimenting. And I had the wherewithal to realize this was my time to experiment. So when given an assignment, I would try and take it in all these crazy directions. And, so I would be the one student when I'd come into class, everybody would be like, "Oh, how did you do that? How'd you do that?" I'm like,
Nice.
And my inspiration was this TV show that I would see, among others. But like I said, the basis of it all was really just curiosity. And Canal Street in New York City isn't what it used to be. And in the '80s, Canal Street was full of crazy shops. You can go and buy a box of gears, and you could buy circuit boards, and tubes, and I wasn't much of an electronics guy, but you have Canal Rubber, which is really the only place that's still there. You could buy rubber sheets and foam rubber and mold making material and plastic tubes and chunks of metal. So I was always down here on Canal Street during my School of Visual Arts times, buying and experimenting with all these materials. And I found a lot of the other students, my contemporaries, were waiting to be told what to do. Okay, this week we're going to design this. Go and find materials for that. But I would go down there for one assignment, and I'd end up buying all different things. And I'd come back and I'd mix and match all these different materials. And people were like, "Who told you about that?" I'm like, "Go to Canal Street. No one needs to tell you. Just walk around." And so I found that, a lot of people, of course, many people are curious, but I notice a lot of people aren't. And I think it's real important to, kind of be curious about materials and tools and processes and just everything. And as a student, I was so curious. And so I bring this as all leading to a point. When I graduated school, I knew so much more than, a lot of my fellow graduates, that the school invited me back to teach. And that's why I started teaching at the School of Visual Arts 4 years after I graduated. And I've been teaching there now for 21 years. So, and that it really helps me as a creative thinker to work with the students. I made a lot of good friends over the years that were my students, and it helps me. It gives me, there's always a new crop of creative minds to experiment with and talk with and share my experiences with. And, the mutual learning is the learning is mutual, I should say.
You mentioned, just being curious about the things around you. And I've heard many times of people saying, you know, I'm not creative, and I'm like, and I just tell them, you just have to open up and allow yourself to be creative and allow yourself to be inspired by the things around you. But I've never really knew how to say that in words. But I think just saying be curious is actually very helpful. Like if you're curious about the things that are around you and about the way that things are built or the materials and how that material was made or whatever, use that as the inspiration to make yourself creative. Like I take the dog for a walk, and we're looking at buildings or trees, and I can see things in those shapes that I can take into something else and make. So you just have to open yourself up and just be curious. That's a great way to put that, you know.
And try never to be, you know, people, when you're with people and they're like, I'm bored. I'm like, how could you be bored? You know, it's like my brain is so trained to just like dissect things. It's like, if I'm not trying to think of something like, you know, whether it's a podcast topic or a movie topic or another list of things I need to do, you know, my brain is always racing. It's like, you know, I never seem to have enough note paper around me. I never seem to have enough Sharpies in my pocket. And, you know, it's just funny when people say, you know, I'm bored. Don't be bored. Look, you know, wherever you're sitting in your environment, just try and like suck up something from that environment that you're in.
Yeah. So I'm curious about, so we've talked about how we got here, but I'm curious about now how we learn. Mm-hmm. So David, how do you, if you find something you want to know, how do you learn it now?
Sure. The quick and easy answer to that is YouTube, of course. Right?
Well, you know, a better answer than that.
It's a pretty good answer, I think. You know?
I get not where you, how.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple years ago, 3 years ago, when I started to get back into woodworking, and I was just absorbing all the information that I could from YouTube. But there's a point where you have to stop watching and you have to start doing, right? So I found a local teacher. His name is Scott. There's not too many woodworking teachers outside of high school and college around this area. And so I just took a 6-week class with him, and just once a week we went and we built a cabinet, and we learned how to dovetail, how to make a case, and then the face frame and a raised panel door. And there's so much, like, you can watch YouTube, you can watch DVDs, you can watch shows, but when somebody is right there showing you how to do something, it's a different experience. Because if somebody shows you how to make a simple box on YouTube, you can make that box. But if you run into an issue that's unique to you or to your tools or to your environment, you don't have an answer to that. But when you learn with somebody, that teacher, that instructor can say, okay, you've run into this problem. Here's how you tackle that. Here's how you fix what just happened. And that's hands-on with somebody else is such a great way. Like when I got my lathe, I had my buddy Sean come over, and he saved me hours of watching YouTube videos or buying a DVD, because he's just like, here's what you need to look out for, and here's how you do this. So I really like finding somebody that you can stand beside, learn, and then ask questions when problems do happen.
Yeah. It's like, it's really important. Like, just somebody asked me the other day, they said, oh, I want to learn welding. I'm like, well, you can go buy a welder, but then you need a grinder and you need a bandsaw and you need all these other things. I said, why don't you just take a small class at a college? You know, because she had no tools whatsoever. I said, take a small class at a college, or maybe just, you know, use your assets. She's a young woman. I said, just go into a welding place and say, I want to learn how to weld. I'm sure 4 guys would be willing to help you for free. So I said, just walk in anywhere and just be curious and just say, oh, I want to learn how to weld. And, you know, so it's important, like you said, I'm just reinforcing your point of work with someone that has experience that could at least say, hey, you know what, here's the door. These are the few things you need to do. Go through it and, you know, don't get hurt. And, you know, it's really important for someone. Like when I learned my ShopBot software, I was using it wrong when I first got it. And I sat with one of the people that work for ShopBot at Make a Fair. Now, in the context of having the machine and knowing the program at least a little bit, I sat down with her and she said, these are the things you do. She showed me for 5 minutes and it like enlightened me. And I never had to call them again. They were so happy. Those 5 minutes she spent with me, it was like my college course, those 5 minutes. She just said, "Oh," and I'm like, like a complete, the light went off in my head, and it was no longer a mystery to me. But like I said, if you just ask a few pointed questions about anything in particular, it's really important. But I just want to, before I forget, I met Kyle Toth this week. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to spend too much time together. But I bring that up because it reminds me of something where you say, "How do we learn?" I have intentions, and one of them is to go to. He went to Bennett Street School in Boston to woodwork. One of my goals that I'd like to try and do one of these days, if I ever had the time, is to go to a school like that and just pretend like I don't know anything and just sit there as a regular student and just go in there and really not trying to be like a spy, because of course I know how to do a lot of things, but I don't think I know how to do everything, and just get instruction from someone that knows joinery really, really well. And that's a goal of mine. And also in the same vein, I would like to try and go to a welding school to get certified as a welder. But again, I would go in there and just completely listen and not say a word and not say like, "Oh, I know how to do that." I'd keep my mouth completely shut.
Be open, be curious.
Yeah, and just be open and be curious. And so those are two things I'd really would like to do. Just get proper training, straight up, and just listen and keep my mouth shut. So,
Bob.
I was thinking about this a lot earlier, and part of the conversation in the Brain Pick last night got me thinking. So Matthias, anybody that's listening to this probably knows who he is and has probably seen his videos. If not, he's a very engineering-minded woodworker. And so we talked about all sorts of different things, but afterwards I was thinking a lot about the different approach between a lot of us on YouTube and how and why we do the things that we're doing. And it went down this rabbit hole, and I got to thinking about, for me personally, if I want to learn how to do let's take a general thing like welding, right? If I want to learn how to be a good welder, I can't really watch a video about welding. I mean, I can, but I'm not going to get a whole lot out of it. I can't even sit down with a welder and a piece of metal and figure it out. What I need personally is I want to make a thing, right? So I want to make a steel table frame. And to do that requires, these 15 skills or whatever, these particular things. And so for me to learn how to do a general thing, I need a specific target. And then that target has requirements. And then I learn those small requirements to get to that target. And then, by the end of the whole thing, I kind of know how to weld, right? But for me, the whole thing is about a specific end goal that is the vehicle to get that knowledge.
You know how to weld, and you come away with a piece that you needed, right?
Right, yeah. But so thinking about that's how I do it. But then talking to him last night, I got to thinking about how obviously everybody learns in a different way, but I wonder, and this is just theory, I have nothing to back this up, and I would love to hear from people, listening on Twitter, on Facebook, or whatever, to tell me how they learn. But I wonder if the people whose output is less tangible, if they learn differently than people whose output is tangible. So like the three of us, we physically make things, we walk away with a physical thing that we can sell, give to somebody, or whatever. Someone who maybe is just super steeped in electrical engineering or in really deep, dark code writing, or, something that is less tangible, that's more, it's just more ethereal. I wonder if they learn in a different way because the application is different, the end. Mm-hmm. So I would be really curious to hear people, what people think about that. And I could be totally off base there, but I ended up down this really deep rabbit hole of thought about like, well, I think this way because I do this thing. So I wonder if somebody that does a different thing thinks a different way about how they learn it.
I think one of the most important things to learn anything, whether it's learning a new language or whether it's learning a new language of say materials or tools or computer language or Chinese or anything, you just got to start physically practicing it. And if it's writing a book or writing a script, you got to start writing. You can't keep reading about how to write a book. You got to start writing a book. I mean, I learned that I had this. There was a time when I was very anxious to try and write a movie script, and I had lots of ideas, and I have some really, really crazy ideas. But I just know right now in my life I am not a good writer. I am horrible at writing, and it's evident every time somebody needs a bio from me. I said, just scrap together something from you find on the internet. Honestly,
Google me.
I go, you'll write a better one than I'll write. Believe me. You add stuff to it. I don't care. But so right now, me writing a movie script is not a good idea. I collaborate with a couple of friends who I find are really good writers. So maybe one day I'll have a couple of these ideas I have, they'll become tangible. But like I said, the point I'm making here is the most important thing is to literally just practice. I'm not a good aluminum TIG welder, and it's pretty evident. And, the trolls let me know it. So it's one of the things I want to learn. But I got a TIG welder from the guys at Longevity, and I just got out some aluminum and I started TIG welding. What's the worst that was going to happen? I'll burn out a tungsten or something. But just start putting yourself through the physical motions, and you'll start firing on all cylinders eventually with enough practice.
You guys have a good point. And when Bob is saying like to build something that you need and learn from that, it's like dovetails. You could practice dovetails on 2 different boards and become good at that. But that's a little bit different than doing dovetails for a full drawer. Because then your brain has to kind of get around, okay, I have these 2 boards. How do I connect these 2 boards to these 2 other boards? So actually make a drawer with those dovetails, and you'll learn so much faster. Learning a language, like a programming language, like jQuery or JavaScript, when you learn how to do that, though, always the first couple chapters are kind of like, here are some basics, but chapter 3 is now we're going to build a calculator, and you actually have a physical thing that you've programmed from beginning to end, and maybe you didn't understand every single thing along that way, but you made this thing and you got a better understanding of how everything works together, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, and I think having those, that success of even like a simple success at the beginning of the learning path is huge. You get one win and then you're like, oh, okay, cool. This is motivation. This is momentum, and that just helps you learn more, get bigger wins, learn more, bigger wins.
I did that. My experience, I can relate to that, is my Arduino. I bought the Arduino cookbook at Maker Faire a couple years ago. I got my Arduino and my little Arduino kit, and I made the light blink. I got so excited, but I got off. I didn't continue on it, which is another short-term goal, is to get back into the Arduino thing. Because now it's becoming more tangible to me. I wanted to learn it before I really had an application for it, and so. I have some ideas now, and people are coming to me. They're like, "Hey, how can I make this light up when you walk by it?" And I'm like, "Oh, you need an Arduino." And I'm like, "What the hell am I talking about? I don't know how to use an Arduino," but I know that's the application for it. Yeah. So now like the ends are starting to come together, and I'm right there in the middle to make them connect. So it's just the society you live in, and making yourself available to these things. And then when you postulate on something like that, it eventually comes to you. So
cool. Right on.
Fancy words. Sorry.
Postulate. Cool. Well, I guess the message for tonight is be curious then.
Be curious. That's such a good message. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Episode title right there. It's happening. Well, I think it's a good spot to stop for the night. Unless you guys got anything else you want to talk about.
That's good.
No, that was a good one. We pulled that one out of the hat. That was cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, to wrap it up, where can we find out about everybody? David?
You can find me on drunkenwoodworker.com, and like always, that has my links to all my social medias and blogs and videos and everything that I do.
You can find me at jimmydiresta.com, and take a look at David Welder's YouTube channel. David is the producer of my tips and Jimmy's tips videos, and Dave's really been trying to put up some videos. So I'm using this to give Dave a plug.
I give him 2 thumbs up.
Cool.
Me too. So that's cool. 4 thumbs up for David. Cool. Well, before we go, I want to thank our patrons from Patreon. We've had some awesome support over there, and it means a whole lot for you guys to support us over there and help us do this show, especially Nicholas Gomez, Luis Gonzalez, and Matthew Dickinson. They're the top patrons, and we really appreciate you guys. And the t-shirts for the exclusive Patreon t-shirts went in the mail yesterday. So if you're one of those patrons that's expecting a shirt, it's on its way to you. So thanks to everybody who has supported us over there. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Next week.
Thank you.